This is KCRG TV 9 News at 6.
After the 2008 floods, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, poured millions of dollars into eastern Iowa communities to help them rebuild and recover.
But an I-9 investigation discovered that FEMA doesn't always follow through on that funding. TV9's chief investigative reporter Josh Scheinblum looked into the numbers. Josh, what did you find?
Beth and Bruce, there are cases all over the country where FEMA essentially promised money and then took it back. In some cases, often years after the fact, it asked cities and counties to repay money it already received. Cedar Rapids is one of those communities which has experienced this often confusing process firsthand.
Part of the challenge with FEMA is they have a lot of turnover.
Cedar Rapids Mayor Ron Corbett isn't shy telling people how he feels about FEMA.
Different people sometimes had different interpretations of the worksheets.
I-9 has learned by analyzing data from FEMA that they didn't follow through on nearly $57 million worth of commitments made to Iowa that would have helped fund disaster-related projects from events in 2008, including those specifically intended to assist Cedar Rapids in their efforts to rebuild after the flood.
Is that frustrating for you when you hear about how much money was obligated and then not delivered?
Well, it's frustrating only in a sense that you get your expectations set at this point.
FEMA did spend a lot in this area. Records show their total obligations in 2008 for all of Linn County reached nearly $400 million. Examples of where obligations weren't met remain all over Cedar Rapids, from the former site of the Sinclair meatpacking plant, where FEMA in that case decided it wouldn't reimburse Cedar Rapids $6.5 million for part of the costs needed to dispose of debris, to the river itself, where a 2013 Office of the Inspector General's report recommended Cedar Rapids return $13.8 million to FEMA after being rewarded the money for the loss of the city's disabled hydro plant. But Mayor Corbett says, at least in that case,
that was one where we were successful in getting not just re-obligated, but allowed for the alternative project to help with the parking structure.
We reached out to FEMA for comment on our findings, and they told us in response that there were appeals that were submitted to FEMA related to the 2008 flooding. Some of the appeals were approved and some were denied, and this is not uncommon throughout the United States related to FEMA projects. We should note, in the case of Sinclair, FEMA determined the city intentionally overstated the cost of cleanup, and that's why it took back that money. Now, Mayor Corbett also said he has some advice for places like Houston and Puerto Rico working with FEMA in the wake of the recent disasters there, among them making sure folks document everything. Bruce and Beth?